Hello everyone, as you can see from my wrist, I've been busy with E3 2019, and today in this video I've got some Watch Dogs Legion impressions. Now I've got notes here, they're kind of sporadic, so if it's a little out of order, a little messy, I apologize, but I'm going to go through bullet point by bullet point and relay as much information based on the time I had looking at the game and actually getting my hands on it. So my experience with this game began with me attending this little pre-gameplay presentation, very short, like a little PowerPoint slide to introduce the game. They talked a bit about how the whole point of the story in Watch Dogs Legion is for you as a group to fight back against what is essentially an authoritarian regime, which is why you as DedSec will be identifying NPCs throughout the world, and whoever you like, you can kind of just recruit without any reservations, without any restrictions. Every NPC, I was told, in the world will be procedurally generated, and their stats will be procedurally generated, and it's going to be done in such a way that, you know, everyone feels as unique as possible. It honestly kind of reminds me of Mother Base from Peace Walker and, you know, Phantom Pain. Except imagine if all of those recruits lived in the world, and whenever you recruit them, that becomes a playable NPC you can kind of immediately switch towards. They also talked about 3 classes, so I don't know how many classes there will be in total, but they talked about 3, and basically when you recruit an NPC from the open world, you'll be able to assign them one of these 3 classes. They are Enforcer, Infiltrator, and Hacker. Enforcers are basically your run-and-gun soldiers. Infiltrators are your sneaky guys, you know, Solid Snake style, that type of thing. And hackers are, of course, people who specialize in deploying bots and hacking turrets and drones and such. So in the presentation, they talked about how Enforcers have abilities like the ability to place sticky mines and use heavy weapons. Infiltrators can cloak themselves temporarily. There's a shockwave ability they can use. They can tag a bunch of enemies permanently. Usually when you tag somebody by clicking on the right stick and pinging the environment, that stays there temporarily. But with All-Seeing, as an infiltrator, you can tag a lot of things permanently, which is very useful. And I was told that Infiltrator is a melee-focused class, so up close and personal, sneaking up on people, etc. And then Hackers have these spider bots that you can directly control. So it's like a little Pokeball that you throw, and it becomes like a spider bot. And then you can hack into it and then control it directly and traverse around the world. And I'll talk a bit more about how I use that a bit later. And then you can also deploy spider turrets and then gain direct control of them. As a hacker, you can also hack combat drones in the environment from enemy factions and, you know, use that to your whim. So those are some of the abilities that they highlighted for these 3 classes, and we'll see if there are more classes than this. They didn't specify that during the presentation. They talked a bit about melee combat. They said that it's kind of like a rock-paper system where you have block, grapple, and punch. So obviously punch beats grapple, grapple beats block, and block beats punch. That's sort of the basic system of it. They talked about how weapons, many of them are non-lethal. They actually said that almost half of the weapons you'll find in this game are non-lethal. And that's because there is a way to play this game without killing anyone, and they touted how killing people in this game has consequences. They didn't elaborate further on that, but killing is something that will have an effect on the world, the story perhaps. From there, they delved a bit into stealth. They talked about how in this game, if you get detected, there is a window in which you can take the enemy down before they alert everyone. That way, it's not like, you know, like in Elder Scrolls where the second they see you do something, it's like the entire world knows or something like that. There's actually time to respond, to mitigate the threat before things get out of hand. Also interesting is how they talked about NPCs being able to go to prison, being able to be hospitalized, and they will stay there however long it is. So if somebody has a certain sentence, they'll stay in jail for however long that is, and then they'll be, you know, released from prison, and then you can interact with them again. Or if they're hospitalized, it'll take some time before they recover. And if you really like someone who was imprisoned or hospitalized, you can expedite that process by, you know, breaking them out of prison or going to the hospital and helping that process out somehow. So you can expedite character recoveries. Though if you manage to get them killed, then that's a permadeath. There's no way to get them back. So that's an interesting concept right there. It's very Fire Emblem-esque in that regard. You have to value every unit, or, you know, if there's someone that you really like, you know, you better protect them. You better be ready to face the consequences of that character dying if you're not careful. So that actually adds a sense of tension to the game. I found that isn't prevalent in other Watch Dogs games, because you can just respawn. It's the same guy, it's the same character, but in this game you can become attached to someone and lose him altogether. So that's actually really interesting. They then talked a bit about how NPCs will be implemented into cutscenes. They basically said any character in the world that you play as will be featured in a cutscene as you progress through the campaign. There's no restrictions on that front. And depending on the character that you play as, depending on their personality, we might see different dialogue that likely progress the story in a similar way as every other NPC would do, but they might express their sentiments differently. So some people might be more serious, others might be more quirky or funny or sarcastic, or, you know, all kinds of personalities will present themselves depending on who you are at the time the cutscene plays. And to achieve this, they talked about how they focused on getting a lot of vocals and voice work out of the actors, not just different voices, but also different personalities out of all of these people. Obviously, whether this pans out in a way that every NPC actually feels unique, whether we'll be able to tell repetition, that's something we can only determine when the game comes out, when we get extensive time with the game. Ubisoft also emphasized that they're not skipping out on story just because there isn't a central character. They talked about how there are 5 storylines, 60 missions total. They emphasized that narrative is a huge focus with this game, and although you don't follow one character, there is an overarching plot that you can really get into. They also talked a bit about an online mode. They wouldn't detail exactly what that entails, except that it's a 4-player co-op, and you can use whatever army, whatever legion you recruit, however you customize them and dress them up. When you join up with other players, you can use that entire repertoire of NPCs online with other people and play with whichever character you recruited. So that's really cool. So that was the intro presentation, which brings us to the gameplay. So when I got my hands on it, the demo began in this bar, and there were a bunch of people in the bar. And already I could press the left bumper and look at, essentially hack people that I saw standing there and look at their different attributes. So I would see at the top a description of like what their life was like. You know, he was a gymnast. This guy, one dude I saw, he can hold his breath for 20 minutes underwater, like random facts like that. And then below that are one statistical advantage, a statistical disadvantage. So I saw stuff like extra damage, extra health, you know, extra hacking ability. So there's all kinds of things, and I probably only saw a very short and kind of narrow glimpse in terms of the kind of perks that you can find within these characters. But I only had like 45 minutes with the game, which is nowhere near enough for me to get a full picture. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, I decided that instead of hiring someone in the bar, instead of recruiting someone that the guy was telling me, I said, hey, I'm going to go outside and see if there's some random dude that I'll spot and say, you're going to be on my team. So I went outside and I just kind of eeny, meeny, miny, moed it, found a guy named Hal, and yeah, he was randomly walking on the street. I pressed the bumper button to get his character profile, and I saw these different stats about him. It was basically something along the lines of, he deals more damage, but as a result, he takes more damage. Now, something that they showed me was that once you add someone that you're interested in to your contacts, you can browse through their character profile, and there's a bar at the top that basically tells you what is their take on this DedSec organization. And his bar was kind of halfway filled, and then I looked at another NPC, their bar was lower, because they were told that DedSec is a terrorist organization. And what you have to do to recruit someone is to fill that bar by doing favors for them that you can see featured sort of in the menu itself. It tells you like what some of their life issues are and how you can help resolve that. And as you do that, you'll fill that bar, and once that gets full, that's when you can do like a recruitment mission for them before they finally join your team. Now, because this was E3 and they didn't want me to waste time, they used like an E3 cheat to fill that bar up like in like a second. It was just a cheat code to expedite this process. But I did get to play the recruitment mission for Hao, again, this random NPC that I randomly chose. And it involved going into a compound and erasing data of him off of a server. And once I did that, I convinced him to join our recruit, and immediately I could just go into the menu and switch to that character. And you can do one of two things. You can either go to the map and see where your other characters are currently, and then immediately teleport towards them and play as them. Or if you're, somewhere where you already want to be, you can go to your contacts list and then find people you've recruited and then bring them to you and swap the current NPC you're using for the one you actually want to use. So yeah, it's very convenient. It's very easy. There is a bit of a loading time. It's not like GTA 5 where it zooms out and pans across the map and then zooms back in. It's like it blacks out, there's a loading time, and then it loads back in and you're that NPC. So I decided to play as Hao, and with his recruitment, I could immediately choose what class I wanted him to be. The previous character I was playing as was this African-American woman who was a hacker. So it's as her that I did Hao's recruitment mission. And let's talk about that for a bit. So as a hacker, I had these spider bots that I could kind of, like a Pokeball that I could throw. So there was a fence, sort of a wall around this compound, and I could throw the spider over that fence. It landed on the other side. It deployed its legs, and then I could hack it so that my point of view would be in the perspective of the spider. I could control him, walk around, and anything I could see I could hack, so I could open doors. And what I had to do with that spider was like try to get around the guards in the compound and find a key card that I would hack and steal the data off of. And then once I did that, I went back to the perspective of the African-American lady character who I used to infiltrate the compound, and with the key in hand, I could unlock the door inside which resided the server, and I had to go in there and physically interact with that object so that I could erase the data that Hao wanted to see erased. So that's kind of what the hacker played like. It's sort of infiltration from afar, which is really interesting. So with Hao, I made him an infiltrator, and he's much more up close and personal because one of his abilities is that he can cloak himself for a limited amount of time, allowing him to sort of navigate certain areas without being detected, without being seen. So I chose Infiltrator, and then after that I got to choose a perk. And a perk gives the class you choose certain abilities. So there were a couple I could choose from. There was a Shockwave one that I previously talked about, the All-Seeing ability that allows me to attack targets. I chose the perk Lunge Attack. Unfortunately, I forgot about it and forgot to use that. Maybe we'll be able to get a glimpse of it if we look at the trailer or gameplay showcase during Ubisoft's E3 2019 conference. So be on the lookout for that. Check out that footage and see if you can spot the lunge attack. I just completely forgot about it because we had so little time. 45 minutes is not a lot, and I just try to, do as much as I could. So as how the Ubisoft representative guided me to a story mission, and that mission involved taking down 3 specific targets who are inside another compound. And I could either take them down lethally or non-lethally. So to that end, the Ubisoft representative told me to bring up the map and I could use the tubes to fast travel around the world. So I fast traveled somewhere much closer to the target location. And there it was. It was a compound right there, and I was shown 3 yellow bleeps on the minimap, which indicated the 3 targets who I had to either neutralize or kill. So as the infiltrator, I played him more like I would, Metal Gear Solid 5 or something, as very much like a Snake-style character, crouching low and going around guards, trying to take them down silently. Unfortunately, I got detected because I had this stun gun, and there was a guard that I was trying to take down, and I shot him in the head, but it didn't actually kill him because he was one of the higher level guards. He was level 7, and I was told by the representative that, a headshot doesn't necessarily kill an enemy if they're too high level, but they also said that they're tweaking this aspect and, still experimenting. The game's still in not early, but it's still in development. They're still modifying things. So, but yeah, I didn't manage to kill him with a headshot or neutralize him with my taser gun or whatever it was. And so, yeah, I had to run away from the compound. All the guards were converging on me. I ran away and sort of hid in this alley, and eventually everything died down. And the second time around, I went back in and actually fulfilled the mission much more elegantly. I found two of the people I had to take down, like, outside the compound. I think maybe they ran after me, and then they were heading back to the base, so that was kind of convenient. And so what I did was I used the hacking feature to distract them. I essentially hacked their phone so it would buzz, and so they would check their phone, and I would use that opportunity to approach them and then take them down silently. And there are multiple, like, stealth kill animations that are really cool. One of them featured my character jumping behind a guy's back and, like, choking him out. Another featured sort of a strike to the leg from behind, and that knocked him down to the floor. So there are multiple of those. And now for the final target, so those were two characters, two targets down. For the third target, I decided to use my hacking abilities to go from camera to camera, jump from camera to camera, and then eventually I found a camera that was inside the compound that had a clear view of my third target, and there was a pipe on my left that I could hack. And when you hold down the L button, you can see various hacking options. So one of them was to make it explode, and another one was to attract their attention. So I first attracted their attention, it made like a noise, and then the NPC walked towards it to see what that noise was all about. And then I detonated that pipe remotely and killed that NPC off. And that was that. That was mission complete. And I had a lot of fun doing that mission. I love doing stealth-style playthroughs of missions, and that definitely scratched an itch. The demo then ended with a cutscene followed by a sequence in which a bunch of the enemy soldiers, the private militia security team, converged on me, and what I had to do was just escape. Or I guess I could have fought, but I felt like I was gonna die if I stayed there, so as an infiltrator, I just decided to book it. And that's about the time when my time was up. So that's sort of the general play-by-play of what I experienced. I did notice a couple bugs throughout my playthrough. This is an earlier build, though, so I hope all of this stuff gets fixed. But, you know, stuff like NPCs walking into objects, like somebody on the street was walking into a pole and they kept walking, and it was hilarious, but obviously immersion breaking. At one point, I saw an NPC kind of trying to sit down where somebody else was already sitting, and it kind of like glitched. And occasionally, here and there, I noticed things like animation stutters. So nothing super major. The game didn't crash at any point or anything like that. It was just a lot of visual elements that needed more refinement. And speaking of visuals, the graphics, I would say that the design of London is very cool. The way they brought so many of these landmark buildings to life, the way every region feels different. So I went from this higher class area where everything was cleaner to a more slum-like area with a lot of like punk rock-like individuals. Both of these areas exuded very different vibes, and I definitely love that. And the world really does feel inhabited, which I really like. But when you get up close and personal, I did notice that things like textures, models, and stuff like animation were all pretty meh up close and personal. Like when the camera's panned back, everything looks pretty alright, but as soon as the camera gets too close to something, it just looks really, textures look kind of muddy, the models look kind of dated. So yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say this is the prettiest looking game I've ever seen, not by a long shot on a technical level. But the recreation of London and their vision of it, this sort of in the not-so-distant future London, where technology is a little more advanced and we're seeing a more cyberpunk kind of aesthetic to it. On that level, artistically, I thought it was really intriguing. I was compelled by the world. As for level design, some people have asked me if the missions themselves will feel pretty repetitive, and that's hard to say with just 45 minutes of gameplay. The two missions that I did felt similar-ish. It was a compound, a bunch of guards, a bunch of, hacking things that you could use to your advantage to infiltrate. And the objectives were different. One of them involved erasing an identity from a server. The other one involved taking down 3 targets. But the general kind of exoskeleton felt very similar. It very much felt like a Ubisoft game. It actually reminded me a lot of an Assassin's Creed game. There's like the restricted area on your minimap that's highlighted red. If you step in there, and if you're detected, you will obviously get shot at or, taken down. But at the same time, even though it does have that Ubisoft open world type of vibe and template to it, the concept of being able to play as any NPC, recruit anyone, kind of build an army that kind of suits you. If you want to recruit just grannies, you can actually do that, I was told. At the beginning of the game, you get like a random roll of characters, but if you want to go pure grannies, then you can just recruit a granny, kill off everyone else, I don't know, send them to their deaths, and then start recruiting grannies from there. And you've got an army of grannies, and you can play the whole game like that if that's what you desire. And on top of that, every NPC can be customized with cosmetics, things like clothes and what have you, apparel, all kinds of things. I stumbled upon a shop where they only sold like UK themed stuff, so UK flag gloves, UK flag hats, and yeah, any character I could give that to if I so desired. So extensive customization in terms of who you can recruit, the character models you can recruit to your army, and how you can customize them after you have recruited them. Now, as far as hacking goes, it was occasionally cumbersome where I felt like I wanted to select one thing, but I accidentally hacked something else, or, like I'd have to hop from camera to camera, and then I accidentally went to the wrong camera, and that camera didn't have a field of view that would allow me to jump to the previous camera, or there was no way to return to the previous thing that I hacked, so I would have to back out and start hacking all over again, go from camera to camera and redo that whole process. Stuff like that kind of got in the way. Just sometimes I would target the wrong thing even though I had intended to target that specific thing. So some refinement there would go a long way. As for story, a lot of people are wondering how this will all work story-wise. Yeah, I saw some cutscenes, and indeed, whichever person I was controlling, using, even if it's some random dude I recruited not that long ago on the sidewalk, they were the ones in the cutscene. They were the ones there. I will say this, it was kind of weird to see how this new recruit acting so confidently. He was almost like acting like a veteran of DedSec, even though I had recruited him like not that long ago. He just like seemed like he really understood what was going on in this organization, even though I recruited him like, in the last mission. So there was a bit of a disconnect there. He doesn't feel like an entirely new person. He feels like he just, like everyone has a hive mind, and whoever you play as kind of picks up from where the previous person left off, even if they were like worlds apart during certain occurrences. So that's one aspect that took me out a bit. But no, I mean, it works. The characters that you use, that you recruit, whoever you use, will be featured in whatever cutscene throughout the main campaign, each with their own different sort of attitude, their different personalities. Though, again, because I only had 45 minutes with the game, I cannot tell you whether it won't seem like they only have a couple templates, whether every character actually feels unique, whether there are limitations to all this. That's stuff that I'll have to find out when I get extensive hands-on with this. As for gunplay, I didn't do too much of that. I mostly just infiltrated, sneak attacked people from behind with melee and stuff. But I did do like one sequence where I shot like a machine gun in third-person view, and it was fine. It felt like a typical third-person shooter. I'm sure there are characters out there who are more accurate with their weapons, people who you can recruit who have more accuracy. So I think it might depend on who you play as in terms of how a weapon feels. But overall, though, it's your typical third-person affair with a cover system and all that. It was fine. As for driving, I did at one point manage to secure an armored vehicle from the private military faction, the main antagonist of this story. And I just drove around, and I felt the controls were fairly comfortable. I didn't have an issue navigating the environment with it. Kind of wreaked some havoc, and I actually got like a wanted star at one point, so I had police chasing after me, and I got off the car after I had kind of been a good distance away and went behind a building and held off there, and they were gone before long. I think that's pretty much everything that I experienced in this demo. I'm still very compelled by all of this. This is a game that I'm still really looking forward to. I just feel like I have to play way more than 45 minutes to determine whether this whole system of playing as any NPC is a gimmick, or if it's something that will genuinely add to the Watch Dogs experience, to the narrative, to the interactive nature of this product. But in terms of the first hour of playing the game, it was really cool to just choose someone at random or, glean at their stats and be like, I kind of like that guy, let's recruit him. And then do all these things, have a whole process that you have to go through before you can recruit them, and then have them use their capabilities for you, and then being able to switch between all these characters at any time. There's nothing quite like this, I will say that. It's a very unique feeling. So this is a game that I'm actually going to keep a close eye on. First impression so far, pretty good. I am worried about level design maybe being repetitive. I am worried that as you play dozens of hours, NPCs will start to feel samey, that there's not going to be enough variety. But who knows, maybe they designed this whole shebang in such a way that every NPC does feel unique. Oh, speaking of, one last thing I'd like to mention is that NPCs, when you look at NPCs information, you can also see who their family is. And if you do a favor for this character who has a family connection to these characters, these guys will have a more positive disposition towards you. They might be easier to recruit because you did a favor for this one guy who is, their father, their whatever, their cousin, whatever they might be. So it's a lot about, making connections that lead to other connections. That's sort of the concept they're going for here. Yeah, I didn't get to test out as much of that as I wanted because 45 minutes wasn't enough, but it's so compelling, and I look forward to hopefully sharing my thoughts with you guys when the game finally launches. But yeah, that's sort of my first impressions of Watch Dogs Legions. Hopefully that answered a lot of your questions. I know I can't answer all of them because, again, my playtime with the game wasn't as extensive as I would have liked or as it needs to be. But, first impressions wise, I'm very intrigued. I am very compelled. I am actually going to pay attention to this game, So, yeah, let me know in the comments below if you have any other questions that I might be able to answer. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.